I'm JC and welcome to the Arsenal box. I hope you're doing well. Today I look to analyse the fixture between Arsenal and Chelsea, which unfortunately finished with a 2-0 victory to Chelsea. It was the first home game at the Emirates where fans were finally allowed back in the stadium at near full capacity, and pressure is beginning to build on Arteta. We'll go through all the numbers, reasons for why things went wrong, and maybe where we could potentially even improve moving forwards. If you do enjoy today's video, please hit that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, but let's waste no further time at all and jump straight into things. Kicking off with the starting 11 as well as the formation that Arteta opted with. After learning that Chelsea were going with a 3-4-3 formation, I was very surprised that Arteta didn't decide to match them up. I think Holding, Mauri and Tierney would have been quite comfortable playing in a back three, Cedric as a right wing back or possibly even Maitland-Niles. And then on the left-hand side, Bukayo Saka, who's played there many times in the past. Nothing would have changed in midfield with Xhaka and Lokonga keeping their places. Smith Rowe would have been pushed out onto the left-hand side, and we know from last season he's played out there quite often. And then Martinelli and Pepe would have stayed where they needed to stay. Unfortunately, we currently have up to 9 senior players out through injury or illness, which includes the likes of Lacazette, Thomas Partey, Gabriel, Bellerin, Ben White, and others. Could Arteta have changed much more with that starting 11? I don't think so. As time goes on and as these senior players return to the starting 11, I think Arsenal's fortunes might change. But yesterday, Chelsea were just head and shoulders above Arsenal in terms of quality. Tuchel's got them playing very well. In terms of shining lights for Arsenal, Lokonga probably the only one from the bunch. Tierney went off with a potential injury. We don't really know the extent of that yet. Martinelli also went off, but I'm led to believe that it is more sort of cramps and fatigue. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Could we have changed much? Formation, personnel? Let me know. Up next, we have match stats with Arsenal on the left and Chelsea on the right. Now, I do appreciate that stats aren't necessarily always the reason as to why a team would win or lose a game. However, let's have a little look here at some of the stats towards the top of the screen. Possession 65% in favour of Chelsea, as well as 22 shots. Now, if we rewind and look at the match stats for the Arsenal-Brentford game, which featured in my previous match report, Arsenal had very similar figures. So my initial concern here is whether we dominate a game or not, we still lose. We don't come out on top. Both of these games ended in a 2-0 defeat. So you have to ask yourself the question, is Arteta getting it right with his system? So is there a possibility that we could change formation? Tactics as well. You've got to ask, what could he change? And also personnel. Now, yes, as mentioned in a previous part of the video, there are up to 9 players out through injury and illness at the moment. And I'd like to think that if some of those players were available, both this game as well as the previous one could have been very different. But moving forwards, we've got Manchester City in our next Premier League game, and the gulf in quality between the top 4 of last season and Arsenal at the moment is very big. So the sooner we can get those senior players back, and the sooner that Arteta potentially looks to change things, whether it's personnel or a system change, the better. But just generally speaking, if we look at these stats, we're not going to go through them all, but if you do want to look at them at your own pace, feel free to pause the video. But generally speaking, Chelsea dominated in every area of this particular game. Tuchel has got the boys very well drilled, and there's a lot left there for Arteta and the Arsenal boys to think about. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Some very interesting information for you to digest in this next section with Arsenal on the left and Chelsea on the right. Now, in the top left-hand corner, we have Arsenal's heat map, which is the less busier of the two. And we can see here that Arsenal tended to play out wide in this particular fixture, more so through Kieran Tierney, who we've become over-reliant on in recent times. And in the bottom left-hand corner, we can see the average positioning of each player throughout the game. And Kieran Tierney is essentially side by side with Saka, playing as a second winger. And this was exploited massively. Cedric on the other side, playing far deeper, offers not much going forwards in terms of support for Pepe. There were times throughout the game where Pepe got forward and he didn't really have anyone else to support him, and he often had to come back with the ball, which is very, very frustrating, having driven forward looking to create something. Now, if we go back to our heat map very, very quickly, there isn't really too much going on in the final third from a central point of view. Martinelli isn't too used to playing in this particular position. There were rumours that suggested that he'd been training as a number 9 for this particular game, but as I said, he hasn't played too often as a striker, and we did miss the likes of Aubameyang and Lacazette, a talisman in that position. Now, if we have a look at Chelsea's on the other hand, the far busier of the two, they covered more ground, they had more possession, and you can see here there are 2 fairly deep red circles in Arsenal's half. Now, this was Kai Havertz and Mason Mount. Chelsea decided to play with more attacking midfield players as opposed to your conventional wingers either side of Lukaku. Now, what this meant was that Kieran Tierney often found himself having to come inside, leaving gaps behind him, and Reece James exploited that space quite often throughout the game, and eventually it resulted in Chelsea's second goal. So when we mentioned earlier that maybe using a different system, different tactics, had we have played 3 at the back with Bukayo Saka as a wing back maybe, these areas wouldn't have been exploited as much. Kieran Tierney and Saka could have doubled up on the likes of Kai Havertz, for example. Things could have played out very, very differently. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment below. Arteta took part in his usual post-match media duties, and of course he was disappointed with 2 defeats from 2 games from the new Premier League season. All us Arsenal fans are disappointed as well. However, we do know that at some point things will eventually turn round. There were positives to take from the game. We did have spells where we created opportunities, and had we have taken one of those, the game could have played out very, very differently. There was a huge penalty shout as well. Saka went down after a challenge from Reece James. Very surprised VAR didn't get involved. We do know that the change in rules have probably not helped things in this regard, with the decision being left in the control of the on-field referee. However, depending on what you read online, will maybe sway your decision, but I thought it was a penalty, and I'm very, very surprised that VAR didn't get involved. He also wants to make sure that the players can be motivated for their next couple of games. We've got a cup game in midweek, followed by a huge game against Manchester City, but he doesn't feel like the players need motivating, and he doesn't feel like us fans need to get on their backs. We need to motivate the players ourselves the best we can. My general thoughts on the game were, had we have had different players involved, had we have used a different system, things would have played out very, very differently. We can't use that as an excuse though. We do really need to try and turn things around in the next few games if we can. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, what you made of Arteta's post-match interview, with more comments available on the Arsenal website. So before we wrap things up, I want to give a quick shout out to John, who is at mentalhealth80 over on Twitter, as he correctly predicted a Lukaku goal. If you do want to feature in a future YouTube video, all you have to do is predict the correct scoreline or an anytime goal scorer in a future video on my Twitter page. All the details over on YouTube. Now, I know this wasn't the result that us Arsenal fans were looking for. Not a great start to the season, but we do know that at some point things will change for the better. So we need to continue to stay positive and back the boys. I'll continue to bring match reports, and if Arsenal do sign someone else before the window closes, I will bring you all of the numbers that you need to understand what to expect from any future signings. Please do subscribe if you're new around here, and hit that like button if you have enjoyed today's video. But for now, I'm JC, and I'll catch you in the next one.